Hi, everyone. On today's episode, we get to hear from Katy, our executive director here at Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, and her intended mom, Kendall. 10 years ago, Kendall and Katy embarked on a journey that has since become a lifelong friendship. Together, they faced challenges head on, celebrated big moments, and ultimately welcomed baby Pace into the world. Now they're here almost 10 years to the date of their first meeting to share what they learned along the way, including advice you won't want to miss if you are considering surrogacy. This surrogacy story is as emotional as it is inspiring. So whether you're curious about surrogacy or you just want to hear a great story, this episode will have you hooked. I can't wait for you to hear this incredible conversation filled with laughter, tears, and inspiration. Enjoy. Me, you, and who? Who knew it would take more than two people to have a baby? In a world where infertility is no longer a taboo topic, this podcast will take you through all of the different aspects of surrogacy and egg donation through the lens of many who walk this journey in different ways. My name is Whitney Hall, and I am a two-time surrogate, now turned surrogacy coordinator for Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, the very agency I used when I chose to carry for two amazing families. With this podcast, it is our goal to help guide and support you as you learn about what it takes to grow a family in an alternative way, as well as hear inspiring and beautiful stories of how this path has changed lives forever. We can't wait for you to hear about just one more way happy families are created every day. Good morning, my friends. I'm so excited I get to talk to you guys. This has been a story I've heard for forever, and I'm just excited I get to finally speak to the both of you.
I'm happy to be here. It's fun.
Thank you for having us, Whitney.
Yes. Okay, so for our friends who are listening, not seeing, why don't you say your names, and that way they know your voice. Katy, you can go first.
I'm Katy and Kendall.
And I am Kendall Pace Monroe.
Yay! And what makes this so exciting and so fun is, Katy, you were Kendall's gestational carrier for what seems like a lifetime ago.
Yes, it was. I was telling somebody the other day, it's been 10 years since we met each other, and we got the blessing of having a very fast journey as opposed to what other people experience these days. But 10 years, that's a long time.
I know. It is a long time, and it also feels like yesterday. I took a blog during my whole fertility journey or whatever, and my husband and I got it out last night. And this is just so weird. But Katy, I met you for the first time on September 7th.
Oh my gosh.
Which is now,
Which is now, yes. At the time of this recording, it's September 9th. That's hilarious.
I know.
Oh yeah, my gosh.
It was Labor Day weekend, right? Right. Of that year. It was Labor Day weekend that you guys drove up from Houston, with a 2 or 3 day notice, I think, and came up for our match meeting. It was awesome.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. And that just kind of speaks to the times, because so much has changed since then and how the process works. But okay, before we dive down there, let's go back a touch. And Kendall, I want to hear from you, what led to surrogacy being the reason why you are growing your family?
Great question. And some of it is a little still unanswered, but after we got married and we knew we wanted a bunch of kids, both of us come from big families, did not have infertility. We were young, definitely did not think it would ever happen to us. There was no reason that it would. I do have an autoimmune disorder, and so that was kind of in the back of our heads, but I got pregnant very easily, but could never keep a pregnancy. So I had reoccurring miscarriages that we were just going to my OBGYN. And then we decided to do IVF. We thought maybe something that if we could genetically test our embryos,
sure,
then we would know that we had healthy embryos. And so we did IVF, and we got the news that all of our embryos were perfect, which is not really what we wanted because we thought maybe it was an embryo problem. So then we did IVF with me a couple times, and both of those also ended in miscarriage. So at that point, we knew it was the oven that was not able to hold it. And so surrogacy was, I knew of like Baby Mama the movie, and that's about it. That was about as much as I knew of surrogacy. And so we went to our IVF doctor, who we trusted and loved, and she said, it does not feel like 10 years ago. It feels like yesterday that we were in her office, and I said, I don't know what to do. And I never fathomed not having a baby. It's all I ever wanted. And she said, well, you're going to make a call. And I said, okay, to who? I mean, I did not even consider, and she said, here is a surrogacy organization. And she said the people that work here, and specifically she was talking about the CEO at the time. And she said, this person I would let babysit my children. I hold her in the highest regard. And this is the number you call. And I said, yes, ma'am. And so we called, and I said, I guess we're interested in surrogacy. And that was our kind of first step into saying, now what? Yeah. Now what do we do?
Oh my gosh. So during that time, I mean, obviously you had already been through so much. How did you kind of navigate your own like process as like, hey, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to grow our family. What were kind of some of those feelings coming from all that?
I have had the privilege to walk with other people as they have gone through it. And when I look back at myself, I think like, wow, you really didn't wait a lot. I think my grief, the old prayer, like, when you're praying, move your feet. I think I just was like, okay, so like, what am I supposed to do next? Like, I want a baby. I know I want a baby. The grief process was happening anyway. I was like, I can just sit here with the grief, or I can do something while I'm sitting here with the grief. So for me, I was just like, what's the next step? The next step, the next step. I think I also was a little naive into what it was. And so it was like, I couldn't really worry that far down the path because I was just doing what they told me to do next. And it wasn't all, super easy. Yeah, when I was rereading our blog and stuff, Will and I were like, oh my gosh, I forgot that happened. Which is, God's way of healing you to be able to move forward. My mom has 5 kids, and she says that she always forgot that she said she would never do it again until she's in labor. And then she's like, oh, I said I was never going to do this again. And then immediately you forget, right? And then you're back. So I think that's kind of what God does to you after he fulfills his promise. And we got our family. But so I think for me, the grief was, as I was grieving, I was just doing the next action step. I would just focus on what the next action step was for me. And things didn't align perfectly every time, but as long as I felt like there was something I was doing next, it felt like we could do it. It felt like something that we definitely wanted to do. There was a time when we thought this wasn't for us. We were actually, and maybe I'm going too fast, but there was a time we were matched. And that the person that we were matched with, we met her. She was great. We were excited. And then our IVF doctor declined her as a surrogate. And that was just completely gutting for us. We were like, we're doing the next steps. And then this person didn't pass the screening and from our fertility doctor. And I actually found in the blog when it happens, and it's going to make me cry, but so she and then this is how we ended up getting Katy, is that I wrote So she declines it, and she pulls us in her office, and she tells us, like, I'm not going to pass this person. I'm not going to let her be your surrogate. And she said, but I'm going to call the gestational carrier agency, is what I wrote here, the gestational carrier agency on your behalf. And she said that, and I wrote this after we had found out that we were going to meet Katy. And she said, I wrote, when our doctor called the gestational carrier agency on our behalf, she said, I have a couple that I started seeing 2 years ago, and their light shines so bright. Today, they've just left my office, and I'm worried their light is barely a flicker. Makes me cry. And then I wrote, I sure hope Katy makes us parents, but even if she doesn't, I am forever grateful that she has made our light continue to burn. So it was the time, looking back, it feels like, oh, it all happened so quickly. But when we look at the dates, I'm like, man, that pain and that page was.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Kendall, you're going to give me salty coffee. Oh my gosh. Yes.
And then we met Katy.
Yeah. But you're so right. There's so much journey that happens before this big journey, and it isn't a guarantee, as much as we try so hard to just have that best foot forward all the time, and and everything. And that's a lot to just think about before you even get started on this next big step. No, that's huge. But then you met Katy. Oh my goodness. Okay, what was that like? Katy, what was that like for you? You find out about these gorgeous parents who've gone through so much already. What was that?
Yeah, so Gail, the executive director at the time, I was already working in the field of egg donation, and Kendall and I have a lot of similar things about us, because I would say fast would be another thing. I literally was walking through TJ Maxx, and I called my husband. I was like, I think I should probably be a surrogate, right? And he was like, you want to be pregnant again? And I was like, I mean, it'll be fine. Like, we have 3 kids. We're done. So many people need a surrogate. And in that same TJ Maxx wandering, I called Gail, and I was like, hey, I think I should probably be a surrogate, but I don't want to fill out an application. I obviously knew Gail from a professional standpoint. I was like, I don't really want to fill out an application, because you just need to pick an awesome family for me. And I didn't want my
This is not how this is done anymore. This is not how this is done.
It is not. Well, and it was when it was done differently, where surrogate profiles were sent to intended parents first. And now, of course, surrogates get to pick intended parents. So that is why a surrogate has to. Yes, with our agency. So that is why now.
When we went through it initially, and we did pick the first match that we had that ended up being a failed match, it was sent to us in a Word document with inserted photos.
So
I probably still have them, which I should probably delete. They were just sent to us in a Word, and you would just scrolled through. I remember one person. Yeah, it was just.
Yeah, you just scroll through the Word document.
And now we have a portal.
Yeah.
That people see information, and they don't have access to it anymore. So yeah, I just told Gail, I need a really great family, and God perfectly matched us with the Monroes. And I say us because our match meeting involved all 3 of my children, which we don't really do anymore either. So,
oh my gosh. How was that match meeting?
When was it, or where was it?
No, how was it?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I brought all 3 of my kids, but for us, it went amazing.
We brought them for a second. Blake took them away.
He did. Okay.
So to me, one of the only things I remember, and now it hits me every time. And Katie's like, I don't even remember that. It's fine. But we stopped at Buc-ee's on the way, naturally. And I was like, oh, I need to bring her kids something. And so I bought them giant pieces of candy. And looking back, I'm like, if somebody gave that to my kid right now, I'd be like, really? What? Really? I don't even know how someone is eating that. And I was like, here y'all go. Like me, please. Choose me,
Okay, but what about, so this is skipping ahead and I won't say much, but the night they came in town, because I had a scheduled C-section, and
Oh, you're skipping way ahead. Let's do it.
Well, I'll just tell this one part because Kendall also gave them a death raft.
I stand by
yes. Okay. No. It was a raft that we blew up that had one little circle in the middle for one of my children's heads to pop up and out of. And it was like a year or two later, I think once Pace, she was like, oh my gosh, that was the worst raft ever. I was like, yeah, it was kind of like.
I stand by a dangerous raft. I don't stand by the Buc-ee's candy. That one was a stretch. That was a stretch.
I love it. It was always good. Anyways,
I love it. Oh my God.
Gifts from Kendall.
Yeah. Gifts from Kendall. I want to see that list. That's hilarious. So,
I have some really good ones too, though.
Okay, so you have your match meeting where all of the children are there. You meet each other. What, obviously, Kendall, you were, bribing everybody with your masses of candy. But what was, Katy, what was your takeaway? And then Kendall, what was your takeaway after already having gone through this step and then having it not move forward? I would love to hear both perspectives.
I think, first of all, they also brought a book, like a family book album type that explained their family. And, I think something about knowing like Kendall and Will's parents and like from a grandparent perspective and all of their siblings, like there was something special about understanding that we as a family were helping a family, but also extended family. And there was something really cool and special about that, just knowing that it wasn't just, not that it wasn't completely worth it for Kendall to do it for Kendall and Will, but that there were extra components of this too. And, that played out in lots of spaces, including delivery day. And both of their moms were just so generous and sweet and kind to me as well. And included me in things. And so I think that piece was special and they were just easy to talk to. And I could tell, like, as you say, Kendall, now, like just taking that one next step, I could see that like piece in you in that match meeting, which of course, with things that we dealt with later on, it was good that was Kendall's personality and ability to just take that next right step and what that looked like, regardless of us not knowing the whole big picture.
Yeah. What about you, Kendall? How did you feel?
When we were sitting in our doctor's office and she's like, this is what I think you guys need to do. I think you need to do surrogacy. And I was like, what? Like, what do you, how, like, it was just not even, I hadn't known anyone that had done it.
Right.
And she was very much like, look, this is a business transaction in so many ways, right? Like you don't have to like this person. They don't have to live in your city, like you will make sure, you use an agency to make sure that this person is going to be ethical and safe and all of those things, that those worries are removed from you. And so you go through this, but you're not going to meet your best friend. You're not going to, this is somebody that you are going to trust to fulfill a contract. And that is also why she explained to us that she didn't approve the other person, right? She was like, I cannot in full faith say that I believe this person could have a healthy pregnancy, which is the only reason that you are doing this. And so I don't really care that you liked her. The job is that she needs to have a baby for you. And so when I went into the meeting with Katy, I was very much like, okay, I trust that she's going to be safe. I trust that this is an ethical arrangement. And so it doesn't really matter if you like her. And then we're like, well, shoot, we really liked her. So it ended up sort of being this, like, it felt very comfortable by the end. But I will also say for people listening where it might not feel comfortable, like it was still awkward, right? Like it's not like so much of Katy and I's relationship has been post-Pace, which is the name of my son. So it's not like it happens instantly. And there was this like, oh, this is going to be so easy, no problems at all. I still was very much like, this is a relationship that is happening. Like we're going into business with somebody and we're going to trust them. But she doesn't have to be my best friend. She doesn't have to be my best friend. Her kids need to like me, hence why I brought lollipops. But she doesn't need to be my best friend. And that was sort of my perspective going in. And then it was just this added bonus that she was a delight, a delight to talk to.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting how, again, just the evolution of, an RE saying this is a business transaction and this doesn't need to be your best friend. And in some cases, that's fine for everybody. Right. But for so many others, it is so much more. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, it is so much more than a business transaction. Whether you become best friends or not, there's this link that is always going to be there. And it is, I think you hit the nail on the head. If you're going to trust someone to do something so big, it's automatically more than just a business transaction.
Yeah, exactly. And the second you get together, you realize like, oh, well, this is going to be different than us just signing a contract, right? But I think that's what I told myself walking in was like, you don't have to be her best friend. You don't have to be her best friend. You don't have to be her best friend. And then it was just this added bonus that we did connect and that we continue to connect was really the added bonus was that grew over time.
Well, and it makes sense after, just what had happened with you had found somebody that you had connected with and then all of a sudden to have that taken away, it makes sense to have that wall. And I'm so glad that it worked out differently. But, back to that trust factor, I know, things went pretty fast. We had a successful first transfer, which is amazing.
But actually we got delayed.
Oh, we got delayed.
We did. We got delayed.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I had polyps that had to be removed. We got delayed, yet we still had a transfer in less than 2 months, which is pretty unheard of in the industry.
That is wild. That is wild. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild now knowing what we know. But yes, that's right. I went in for that screening and I had a couple of polyps that needed to be removed. And then it was like, well, my OB didn't want to do it. So then we had to do the RE and it was kind of a lot for me to go to Houston. So Kendall and Well graciously let me take care of that here with like a local RE. And so had those polyps removed before I could start meds.
Yeah.
In between, like I went to Disney and on a Disney cruise. It was just kind of
like, I know looking back, it feels fast, but like it did not at the time. It felt
it didn't at that. Well,
another delay. Like this is gut wrenching, So
well, and at first they told us like, well, and at first they told us you can start meds in January, and I called Kendall and I was like, squeaky wheel gets the grease. Tell them we're not going to do that. I don't even think you can do that anymore. But I was like, nah, just call your nurse and tell them, like, we don't want to wait to start meds till January. We want to start meds now.
We want to start meds now. That is so funny. Yeah, but you're so right, though, because when you're in it, especially after you have had, again, you had an entire journey before you even went on this journey, Kendall. So, like, every day feels like a year. But then when you look back on it, it's like, oh, yeah, no, it was only 2 months. It was fine. Right. And then you're like, oh, but wait, no, it didn't feel fine. It didn't feel fine at all. Yeah. No, that's crazy. So we get through the polyps. We do transfer. What were feelings around transfer? How did we feel?
If I could like have a hobby of just seeing transfers, I would. I love transfer day. I think it is the most extraordinary. It's just all magic. It is. I love it. There's, she's a little loopy or whatever. If you take what do you take now? Do they still
the Valium? Yeah.
Yeah. And I had been through it, right? So I knew what to expect as far as like, they wheel in the big incubator and like all of the words, so we knew what to expect as far as that goes. And I think that just made it more exciting. But once you get to transfer day, it was, yes, it was emotional. I'm obviously a crier, so that was not, I'm sure I cried. I don't remember it feeling super emotional in that way. I remember us just being like, please, please, please work. Like this has to work. This has to work. Just those 2 weeks that was a long wait. But the actual transfer day, I only remember fun. I remember where we went to lunch after or dinner after or whatever, but I only remember happy things. Am I misremembering, Katie? Was there?
No, I mean, I will say I didn't know as much what to expect. So I definitely was just following along. I just remember that weird, obviously, this was my first time being a surrogate, first transfer. So the concept of like, like we're going to have a baby, like in those moments, I guess is kind of surreal.
Well, and it was back in the day when we put in 2. So we were like, we're going to have babies.
That's true. Yes, that's true. Yes, I did agree to that. My only question was like, what's the chances of this being triplets? But ultimately I was like, I don't care. It's not me that has to take home twins.
Right.
Like,
There you go.
That's
there you go.
Because we didn't have one, we didn't know that would be hard. We're like, oh, we totally got it. Yeah, give us 2.
Yeah.
Says the woman passing out the candy.
Exactly.
Yes. So, so it was still a cool and special
thing. Only one took, but
yes, only one took.
Who was at the time though? We were like, what will it be?
So yeah, it was just this. I'm so glad it was a magical moment. And then you said those 2 weeks were like ages again, another year of like your life.
It was over the holidays too, which
Jiminy.
It's over Thanksgiving. Yeah,
it was over Thanksgiving.
Did we at least have holidays to distract us, or were we just like sitting there like stirring mashed potatoes, not even?
Oh yeah, I remember. I remember we went out with my husband's family or whatever, and his cousin came up to me and she was like, "You're not paying attention to anything." And I was like, "What? No, I'm not here. Like, what are we doing?"
Katie, did it ever occur to you that it wouldn't work?
No. I think that was one of the maybe like, if you could say, a disconnect between Kendall and I, because I had never experienced loss personally when I had never had any miscarriages. My husband and I seemed to have looked at one another and managed to get ourselves pregnant. And so like when I got pregnant with my third, I said, we're going to be a family of 5 and I will get my tubes tied. Like it was just one big long statement. And so I never dreamed it wouldn't work. I mean, I tested a little early and
I was like, even when we went in for a heartbeat for the first time, I remember being like, okay, that's a good step. That's a good step. And
you had been to that step before.
Yeah, Katie was always like, what are we going to name him? Like, what is the nursery going to look like? And I was like, oh, okay, let's get to the next heartbeat.
Yeah.
It does pay to have a surrogate that's an optimist. In that regard, that was very emotionally comforting for me, even if I couldn't get there.
Okay.
No, that's really good to hear, because I think it's sometimes, I know for me in my second journey, I would celebrate all these moments, and I knew in my head, I was like, well, of course, my intended mom is kind of, like, subdued's not the right word, but like, she's not jumping for joy, and she's not like planning the baby shower. She's not decorating the nursery yet. And I'm sitting here like looking at a color wheel, for crying out loud. And, and I think there is sometimes, speaking of, like being in that position, and like you, Katie, where it was like, I hadn't experienced that loss, and you kind of sometimes know it in your head, but then when you're in it, you want to celebrate those big moments because it's exciting. But yeah, Kendall, you had those big moments, and then they hadn't come to fruition. When do you think it felt real to you? When did you let yourself kind of celebrate?
I'm going to be honest. I remember definitely when we found out it was a boy, obviously that felt like something. We did decide we were going to find out the gender so that we could I will say, looking back, I overly worried that I was not going to connect. I was like
Mm.
overly worried of like, am I feeling connected enough to him? And I think because I have additional children that I carried myself,
Yeah.
that now I know like there's no difference. Like there's no difference. You hold a baby, obviously, for all of the babies, you feel, personally, I felt an immense desire to protect them, but they all sort of felt like strangers, right? I mean, I did not have a reaction of like, of course, this is what you look like. I was like, oh, how funny you look like this. So and then, obviously my love continues to grow, but I think the
Yeah.
need to like protect and of like, absolutely, I am your mother was like in an instant.
Mm.
But there was no difference for me in when any of the times that I've held one of my children. But I think I over worried during Katie's pregnancy that I was supposed to feel a certain way. I think I probably overanalyzed that. Thankful for good therapists that help walk you through that. But
Love a good therapist.
yeah,
Recommend
and
it
I
to
think
everyone.
mostly you just got to get through it. Mostly you just got to get to the finish line.
Mhm.
Katie and I we communicated for sure. We didn't live in the same city, so we would try very, very, very hard to make it to the big appointments.
Yeah.
And of course, she would say, come to anything you want to come to. But we didn't live in the same town, so it's not like we were, having coffee every morning or something. She would send pictures, weekly pictures of her baby growing. And at the time, her youngest felt so big to me. And looking back, I'm like, that's hilarious. She was a little baby herself. But Maggie, her youngest, is like in all of the pictures as Katie's belly grows, Maggie grows. And I think that definitely helped us stay like, oh, it's, we made it to the next week.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like we were, most of pregnancy, there's nothing to talk about, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she would be like, I felt a move or whatever, but most of it, there's not a lot to hash out. We did have a fairly big bump in the road.
I was going to say there was a bump later. We love a boring pregnancy is what I love to call it. We want pregnancy to be as insanely boring as possible.
And we did.
But you guys
we had a good first half.
We had a good first half. We had a good first half. And then it became not boring. What? Tell me all of the things that happened. Katie,
you're up.
What happened?
Well, when you're pregnant, you typically like to eat things. One of those things for me is often ice cream. Ice cream and quesadillas. I don't know where it comes from. But those are the two things that I like to eat when I'm pregnant. And so one afternoon when Blake was going to pick up the kids from Mother's Day out, and I remember this because I didn't want anybody judging me as I pull the ice cream out on, at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I ate some Bluebell ice cream, and that was during the shenanigans with Bluebell and Listeria. And so that day, and I remember eating it because I remember when I was eating it because I didn't want anybody to see me eating it, which is horrible and stupid, but we digress. And that night I got so sick. I mean, I've told people I are wildly sick. I was up at that house time, our bedroom was upstairs. My husband was downstairs, and I was on the bathroom floor for hours, throwing up, feeling contractions. But I was so sick, I couldn't even get up to get my phone to ask my husband to come upstairs. But it subsided after a few hours, and my stomach hurt the next couple of days. But I was like, man, that was a tough stomach bug. And I didn't think anything of it until 4, 5, 6 days later, probably. The local grocery store called and said, you bought this Bluebell that was contaminated with Listeria. This is going to make me sound like an idiot. I knew you don't eat lunch meat, and I knew all the rules, but I didn't really know why. I just knew what the rules were in pregnancy.
Sure.
And then I Googled like listeria in pregnant women, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And then it started just like triggering everything. Oh my gosh, I was sick, and so I immediately called
This
my
is why we
OB.
don't recommend Dr. Google.
Yes, that's true. But yes.
In this
So
case, this was good.
I called my OB. I didn't take any medical advice from Dr. Google. It
This is good.
allowed me to call my OB. So I called my OB. She said, "Don't even come here. I will get you in with the MFM. You need to go now." So like, she was like, "It's not even." I did not go. I went straight to the MFM.
Maternal fetal medicine doctor, for those
Yes.
who know, high risk doctor.
In the middle of this, I'm pretty sure I called y'all. I called y'all before I went to the MFM.
When I remember where I was sitting in my office,
Yeah.
you called us when they had just told you were going to be inpatient. They were like, "We're admitting you."
Okay.
And I don't even think you had called Blake yet, but you called and you were like,
Yeah.
So I ate ice cream and I think I have listeria. And of course I'm like at my computer Googling like listeria.
Googling too.
But she's still talking to the front desk person. And she's like, okay, they're gonna, I was like, what are they gonna do? And you were like, they're admitting me. I'm like, oh, okay, when? And you were like, right now. I was like, okay.
Yeah. Like the MFM was like, no, you may not go home and get a bag. Like I was at a different hospital, but they were like, because I went specifically to the hospital where my OB was and where I would deliver. So went there, and I mean, that obviously was an exceptional, scary time for everyone, most definitely for Kendall and Will. But I will just never forget the like grace and trust that they showed myself and Blake. Like as a surrogate, like I was like, oh my gosh, like I freaking ate ice cream. And now, I mean, read about listeria and what could happen to their baby. Like there was just this feeling of like, I let them down, and oh my gosh, they've been through so much, and this is what's going to cause this to not go well. And, but I remember, and then there's so many decisions, like all these people are coming in and out, and really it just got to the point that I was like, okay, hold please. And I would just get Kendall on the phone. Like I just felt like that was in that sort of a scenario, it wasn't about me. It was about their baby, and they needed to have their questions answered. And I didn't necessarily know exactly what was important to them. And so that was the best, I felt like at that time, and I guess I would stand true to that now. Like that was the best thing where mom and dad could get the information they needed about their baby. But I remember Kendall saying like, Katy, we trust that you're going to make the same decision for our baby as you would for your babies. And that was true. I was like moving that weekend, like we were moving homes, and like called our realtor, and it was looking like I was going to get to spend a whole lot of weeks in the hospital there in the beginning, like the remaining of the pregnancy. And Kendall's like, it's fine. Me and my mom will come up. My mom will keep the kids. I'll help Blake get moved. Realtor called to get the notary to come to the hospital so we could close on our house like in 3 days. But life like that level of, nope, life doesn't stop. Like that level of just grace and trust that they showed us, because, and I know obviously being in the industry now, as long as I have, that it doesn't always go that way. And I think that's a testament to like a good match and communication, right? Because I could have been less forthcoming, or, and they could have been totally overbearing. There's probably
it's a fine line.
A lot
it's
of
a
things.
fine line.
Yeah.
And there's so much fear that can happen. I mean, Kendall had every reason to, for lack of a better word, lose it, because I mean, just here's the big bad news. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Here it is. And instead it was, I'm taking that next step forward. Okay, what are we doing? My mom's going to come take kids. I'm going to come and help move Blake. Just, whatever. Like, everybody was just taking that next step forward. And I mean, you're so right, Katy, that again, that trust factor. Yes, Kendall came into this as business transaction, but at the end of the day, like, it's that trust factor. I mean, and it's huge, especially in a moment like that where things are unknown and fear is so real. So real.
My best girlfriend, she has 2 kids older than mine. And so when we were going through contracts, I remember us, I was talking about, I was like, well, I don't want her to like, because you can be insane about a contract, right? And I remember I was like, I don't want her eating junk. Like, I want him to have like, or the baby to have, good nutrients or something. I don't even remember what I was fixated on at the moment.
Sure.
And I remember her going like, Kendall, I ate Whataburger French fries for 18 weeks because it was the only thing that I wouldn't puke. And she was like, it's gonna be fine. Like, don't let that go. Like, what would you rather her not eat anything if the only thing that tastes good to her is Whataburger French fries? Don't you want her to have the Whataburger French fries? And the reason I remember it is because it was so helpful in reframing me from business contract to, oh, wait, like this is a person that is a reasonable person. Yes, we have this contract to hold us accountable, but this is a reasonable human, right? And she's going to eat some Whataburger French fries if she's feeling nauseous and whatever. But, at the end of the day, she also wants to deliver a healthy baby. And so that like reframe during contracts, I remember thinking about that when all of this was happening, because Katy is a reasonable person, right? She is the one that is speaking to a physician at the, yes, she's trying to coordinate with us as much as she can, but, she also wants this to end in a healthy pregnancy. And she also wants to be healthy. And she also wants the best doctor. And she also wants the best care. So we weren't really, it really never felt like, oh, Katy has one agenda of like protect self and I was representing the baby, it never really felt like that. It was, we both have the same goal here. I want Katy to be healthy and I want our baby to be healthy. And so, whatever made sense for us to be able to get her the medicine, whether it was in the hospital or whether she went on home health, like it didn't really, our goal together was the same.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did things end? Obviously it ended in a gorgeous pregnancy. Spoiler alert, everything turned out fine, but how did we get to fine?
Well, I mean, it did mean a different, not simple pregnancy like we intended, and even how it looked initially. Ultimately, they said, I was 22 weeks.
Yeah, they said we needed to get to, at the time, I don't know if viability has changed. At the time, the goal was 23 weeks and 3 days. And so we had like 11 days or something until we needed to get to the 23 weeks and 3 days. And then we would even be able to decide based on how sick she was, or if there was fear that it had crossed the placenta, that then we could
deliver early.
So we had to get to that marker first. Yeah. So during that time, the goal was for her not to have contractions, for her to stay pregnant, and then for her to receive all of the medications, however she could. And she ended up having a PICC line in her neck.
So they ended up saying for that date, like, it didn't make sense for me to sit in the hospital. It wouldn't have helped pace, and I wasn't having I mean, I didn't have any more contractions after that
initial
actual
sick
episode. And so it made the most sense, time, financials, all of the things, just for me to go home with a PICC line. And they brought in home health, and I did IV antibiotic infusions twice a day for 14 days, went on a regimen of that. And then I continued to go. So then I had weekly appointments from there. what were they? What kind of tests were they called? I feel
Like a stress test? Right?
stress tests is what it's
Oh, the
called.
NSTs?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
so they were like hour-long appointments every single week. Now that I went in and laid down and they put the monitor on and they monitored him and would let them know the results. Everything looked good. I mean, I don't remember us having any hiccups on any of those. You would no.
No?
I mean, so it just really meant a lot more monitoring than what
There was
we
one
had.
time you had to go back again the next day. Like
That's right.
you were having
It was
big
10 years
health
ago.
contractions or
You
something.
read that in the blog.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Which we should link Kendall's blog. I forgot how much you blogged. And I know a lot of people don't read blogs anymore, but it was so good. Like,
It was,
she's a gifted
when you
writer.
started reading it, I was like, I can't read this. And like, I need to put this away for a second.
Yeah.
It was
good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, but it's great that you did that, because I think, I mean, obviously, like time doesn't stop. We continue to move forward now, all of the things, and it's wonderful to get to be able to look back on, Pace's origin story and remembering all of those things. And, because it was this, despite all of the bumps, it's a beautiful story that, obviously ended in a just fantastic way. So, Kendall, as you're, kind of the other shoe dropped, something happened. What were kind of your feelings as Katie's going to these weekly appointments? And, obviously, of course, like, we can't say it enough, that trust factor was there. You knew she was doing everything she could to make everything as wonderful and fantastic as possible, and keeping Pace safe and growing him well, and, all of those things. But how were you feeling each time that weekly appointment came up, and each milestone that you met, and just all of those things?
Yeah, I don't really remember when I do know that my husband was getting more excited than I was at some point. And he was like, don't you think we should like maybe paint the nursery? And I remember talking to Katie, and she was like, you did it.
You did it. You painted.
My sister was actually pregnant at the same time, which ended up being really fun because I was able to kind of connect with somebody in person that, was a little bit ahead of where Katie was. She would be like, I registered. Are you going to do that? That sort of thing. So I was still very reserved in a lot of ways. I did not want a baby shower. I have 4 sisters, and they were like, we're going to have a baby shower and you're just, you're going to come in your pajamas, and it'll just be our family and my 2 best girlfriends, and we had bagels, and, I was still very much struggling, probably the entire pregnancy, to feel celebratory, if I'm honest. And I don't want to like intimidate anybody here to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to, feel this way the whole time. But unfortunately, that was true for me. I never really felt relaxed, probably. I never really felt like it was definitely going to happen, probably until the end.
I think that's true for so many. And I always love to say every journey is so different. And it's interesting, Kendall, you said a little bit ago, you felt like you were feeling like you weren't feeling the right way during the journey. And there just is no right way. Everybody's path to this and then through it is so unique and different. And how you got through, you did celebrate in your own way. You did paint the nursery eventually.
We did laugh a lot. Katie is very good about providing levity to those situations. And so there was a lot of like, we can both share that type of humor that is dark sometimes, but and so of course there was still, it wasn't like there was no happy moments, just like full-fledged, oh, I'm going to have a baby any minute now. Happiness was a little delayed, I think.
100%. But I think I think it's beautiful. I love a good dark humor. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. You gotta survive
Words to Dairy Queen. I was like, okay, noted. Okay, that will be the only place I get ice cream from moving forward.
I still don't eat Bluebell, but don't ask the Incolade family if they eat
Blake does. Oh, I got him stopped for 2 years, and I was like, "You like Kendall and Will are coming to visit. Like, we're gonna have to take this out. You people, y'all
No
are not."
Bluebell.
We have still never had
Pace will not be
Bluebell.
making the field trip to
Yeah.
Brenham. We
Yeah.
will not be
Exactly. We did have
Yeah.
an ice cream party for his 1-year-old.
Stop it.
That's right. Yeah. But it was
That
not
is poetic. That's beautiful.
Not at Bluebell, but we purposely had an ice cream party because he beat ice cream. But yeah.
That's amazing. I love it. Shout out to Bluebell. I love you. And the Incolade family loves you.
No, and Katie does not. Blake does.
Blake does. Blake does. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I take it back.
Blake
I
does.
take it back. Oh my gosh. Okay. We finally get to delivery day. How was it? And delivery day, like you had a full term pregnancy, Katie. Like there was no, we just had those fun weekly appointments. And then we got
we delivered at 39 weeks. My OB was going to Disney World herself, and I was like, oh, like at 40 weeks, I was like, oh no, I did not agree to do this with somebody else. Like she had delivered all of I was having a scheduled C-section. And so like they had met her and liked her and trusted her, and so did I. And I had delivered all my kids at 39 weeks. And obviously everything that we knew, Pace was strong and healthy. And so we had a scheduled C-section around 12:30.
However, a week before that, she started having contractions in the middle of the night.
Oh, that's true. Yes.
And she called and she was like, hey, I might think I'm in labor. And so like looking back, the amount we laugh about it, for some reason we were like, oh my gosh, pack the car. And so we start throwing stuff in the car, but like we threw like an extra saucer in the car. And the only reason I even know that is because we have a picture. And like looking back, I'm like, did we think that the 3-day-old was going to need the extra saucer? I don't know. But, we brought it all. Anything that I had received at that pajama baby shower came with that. And we got like halfway to Dallas, and then Katie called and she was like, "No, I'm not in labor. Turn around." And so then we came back. But that was a fun practice round.
I forgot about that.
I love it. Oh my God, an extra saucer. That's amazing. That's amazing. So, okay, delivery day comes. It's scheduled. I love a good scheduled C-section. I feel like it's very chill. Everyone arrives. They know it's happening.
It was wonderful.
And all of the mothers were there. Your mother and your mother-in-law.
Our siblings were there.
It was a party.
Both of our parents were there. Whole gaggle of people took up the entire waiting room. And Katie's dad was there. My mom actually was like, we think that's Katie's dad. And my dad was like, well, his baby's having surgery too, And so he stayed until it was, until actually Will walked out and was crying and hugged everybody. And that's when Katie's dad knew like it all went well. And his baby was okay too.
Oh, I love that. I love that. What, looking back on that day, what has kind of been that lasting memory or that feeling when you think back to Pace's birthday?
That day, I wish I could relive it a million times. It was wonderful. And Katie gifted us a photographer. So we get to go back and look at these photos and remember, which we do every single year. And I remember it taking, somebody really should have prepared us for how long C-sections take. They are not quick. I was like, good grief, this is taking forever. But we were very lucky. I know that it varies by hospital, but we were very lucky that Will and I both got to be in there. And which was just phenomenal. Katie was incredible. The whole experience was incredible. I feel like I have just flashes of all of it. They wheeled her back, they took her in there, and then we came in when most of the prep and like the C-section had really already started when we walked in. And And one thing that we always tell Pace in his birth story is like when he came out or whatever, he had this scowl, and we always call it the Monroe scowl because my husband always has this like furrowed brow. And so, you know, he came out and it was wild. It really was. It was extraordinary.
Oh, that's amazing. Such a Monroe scowl. I love it. That's
Yeah,
hilarious.
we still tell him that as part of his story. So um, Katy did great, and I held him and brought him over to her as she was finishing the end of her C-section, and I was extremely emotional, and she was smiling and happy, and it was wonderful. And then we were able to stay at the hospital. Again, I know this varies based on hospital, and we actually didn't know until we got there if we were definitely going to be able to have 2 separate rooms.
Sure.
It was going to depend on, you know, how
census and yeah.
Yep.
And so we were able to have a room, which was great. And we put him in a little onesie that said, "I love my carrier Katy," and brought her over to him. And she was, when after she was out of surgery and met her kids, came up that night, and it was amazing. It was great.
Oh my gosh. What about you, Katy? What was kind of that? I'm sure you were a little loopy.
Yeah. Well, yes, a little loopy. I remember, Kendall, when you were saying earlier, like, how your mom said, like, you don't remember until you're in that moment. I actually remembered laying on that table, like, I felt that last C-section. Like when Maggie, my youngest, like they had a lot of problems with anesthesia and keeping me numb. And like, I'd forgotten that. And like, I remember laying there and thinking, then I was like, it's going to be fine. And ironically, my OB told me later, she was like, oh, that same experience happened to me and it was fine. And it would have been fine for you as well. But there were so many people. And my husband tells the story often to people. Like there was extra doctors and extra nurses. The hospital hadn't had a lot of surrogacy deliveries. And there were people that just wanted to like come in, see like what was going on. What's this dynamic? How does this work? And there was a lot, and there was not a dry eye in the room, just on the experience as a whole. And yeah, there was something different about like delivering a baby, and like he went immediately to Kendall and Will, and she did walk. And I remember those feelings of like, am I going to know? Like, is everything fine? You know, you as a surrogate kind of take that back, but like you take that back seat, but you still want to know, like, is he good? Is he fine? How is he? Like, you know, and
well, especially so after everything.
Yes, that's true. And we had some things like, and that's why my procedure took longer. Like they took the placenta and they were sending it off for testing. And there was a lot of things in that because of our experience. But my husband was in the room too. So he was there. And yes, when they brought Pace around, and he was happy and healthy, and that was amazing. And then, I mean, I remember looking at my OB and was like, can I do this again? Like, I mean, that was the immediate thought was like, there you want more. Like, can I do this again? And like, yes. And on the table, just knowing that if given the opportunity, it would have been something that I would have happily done for them again. And so, yeah, it was and we had a great few days. They were, I know now, exceptionally gracious to stay. They could have left the hospital. I had a C-section, so I was recovering a lot longer than Pace needed to stay. They came and brought him up once, if not twice, every day. So they stayed at a hospital, were exceptionally inconvenienced, but came up.
We stayed one night at the hospital, and then we stayed like across the parking lot at a hotel.
At a hotel.
And so we were like, we're not just gonna be like, thanks so much for the baby, see you later. We stayed at the hotel.
And they came up every day. Kendall would be like, okay, when are the kids coming up to see you? And they would come up when the kids were there. I mean, the kids got multiple snuggles with Pace, and we've got pictures of Maggie practically suffocating him. But she meant well. I have the absolute sweetest picture of, and I still remember it. It's Kendall's, she has a baby. I'm holding him, I'm assuming in this moment, but Kendall's on the floor braiding my littlest hair while my oldest is braiding her hair. And that is Kendall. Like, this is her baby that's been born, but she is sitting on the floor of a hospital, loving my kids through this process. And obviously, like, their mom's sitting in a bed, like recovering from surgery and all of these things. And I think she was just so in tune with all of the things that were going on. It was just really special. It really, really special that they took the same interest in our family as we did in theirs. Yeah. And another sweet part of that was obviously, like, you are leaving the hospital. And I didn't leave until I spent 3 nights, and Kendall and Will came back up to the hospital, and she said, like, I didn't want you to leave by yourself. We all started on this journey together, and I wanted us to leave together. And for them to come back up with Pace and then all of us to leave together was really, really special.
We have one picture and we're like leaving the hospital and we look like a motley crew. I mean, I wonder what people were thinking that were
like, what's going on?
But, it's really fun. And, Maggie, her youngest at the time, would tell people like, oh, my mom's pregnant, but it's not hers. And so we just kept laughing that like Maggie's interpretation of what she would say to strangers. And now there was this actual baby that, for Maggie, it was fun to watch.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I love it. But it is a family affair. It is Maggie in those pictures, and she's growing too and braiding hair. It's a whole family affair, and that's beautiful. Yeah. God, those words are amazing, Kendall, because I love that. That is so special. And again, just speaks to how that relationship evolved despite Houston versus Dallas, and despite the big bumps. It was, it ended so beautifully, and it didn't end. It went beyond.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. What would you say, kind of looking back? Obviously, of course, delivery day is one of the biggest memorable moments, but what would you say is maybe one of your most memorable moments throughout the journey as a whole?
I have clear memories of us, of Will and I praying before we met Katy, like in the car. And I wish that I would have like recorded our prayer or something, because I wonder, looking back, like, wow, it was all fulfilled. Like it was all fine. It really was all fine. But honestly, like so much of the actual pregnancy is a blur. For me, I feel like the snapshots really are what came after. And, again, I went into this thinking like this is a contract, and this contract and this business relationship is built on trust. And this document outlines that. And so I felt comfortable with that going forward. We chose an ethical agency. We knew that is why you use an agency. So we had that as like the foundation. I think all of the little things are what, over time, you look back, and it wasn't like this, like one day I was like, oh, I'm just going to trust, I think I knew we had to, but all of the respect and trust, like that just comes over time. Looking back now, I didn't expect, when we did our contract, we didn't have anything in the contract like, you must be friends forever. That wasn't in the contract. And it was just something that happened along the journey that I certainly didn't expect it to happen. But when you do trust somebody and you guys are extremely vulnerable together, I think a relationship forms that is different than anything that you could have orchestrated.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that we hold so close that, of course, we didn't want it to end just because we got our baby.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. You're so right, though. It's so unique. And no matter where it takes people, it's precious all the way around.
Yeah.
I love that.
We've had lots of fun moments after the fact. And I mean, really the when someone says like, were you fine caring for a family far away? It was fine during the surrogacy journey. Now, if they lived in the same city, would we absolutely love it now? Most certainly, because there's not a time.
I would have babysitters.
Yeah, that's true.
You would have babysitters.
I know. Need to like send one down. But like, there's never, when we get together, they came up at Christmas needing to go to a wedding, and they're like, "Will y'all keep the kids?" I was like, "Heck yeah, we'll keep the kids. Y'all go to the wedding." And they came and stayed and talked for hours until it's like, okay, yeah, like Kendall and I would both like to be in bed at 9:30. And so, or at least quieted down. And like we always do. And my husband and I are always like, man, we would love to just see more of them. But we, visited when she had both of the other boys. And those have always been fun, special memories and birthdays and all sorts of different things. And I mean, God definitely we like, long story, like we've fostered, and a lot of that came from Kendall's heart and guidance and encouragement, and like opening our eyes to needs other outside of these things. And she was a support through that has absolutely, but that's where that friend comes in to place. And that wasn't what, I mean, I remember going to our psychological consultation and that person saying, "What's that bare minimum that you want, Katy?" And I was like, I mean, if we're friends on Facebook, nothing else was a big deal then. I was like, if we're friends on Facebook and I get a Christmas card, like, I think that would be great. Like, just like I would want to know a good friend from high school's kids were happy and healthy. And Kendall also friended me within a couple hours of that appointment. And I look back at that and I'm like, oh, okay. She heard that, and she could have thought I was crazy and she didn't want to be friends with me on Facebook, but she did it because I said that. But that was our I'm not saying it was I guess a business transaction, but like we didn't have this expectation of an ongoing relationship 10 years later when I'm going to Houston for work. Like I've never stayed in a hotel when I go to Houston for work. I'm like, I'm coming. And she's like, okay, you can stay with us. And
right. And you're going to a baseball game. And
whenever that was last, she was like, well, the kids, I was like, it's a Monday night. And she's like, I said, all right, I'll meet you at the baseball fields. Like, got to watch Pace play, and which are fun. Like those are fun memories. They're usually, Pace is not happy to see me. He really just wants to see my kids.
That feels right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So he's like, where are your kids? Like deuces out, which I love because our kids are the same way. When I went, the kids were like, well, can we go? I was like, no, it's a Monday and I'm going for work. Like, no, you can't come. So
I love it. I love it. And I feel like we could have a whole episode post, because I know, Kendall, you did carry eventually with, your two boys after Pace, and, had a whole new journey after that. I mean, my gosh.
I did. Yes. So we actually were hopeful that Katy was going to carry again. And she had too many C-sections that our doctor said, no, she can't carry again. And so to be honest, we didn't have any more money, and we were like, but we really want one right now. We need to save up our money. But in the meantime, science had advanced a little bit, and my health was a little different. And we were like, let's try again. We, took us a couple tries. We didn't tell anyone, like no one. I think we told our family I was pregnant at like 18 weeks. When I told my work I was pregnant, they were like, we know. So yes, I was very, very also nervous with that one. I mean, again, the difference in my emotions were very similar, even with the one I was carrying. So,
Yeah.
And then after that one, like I said, we always knew we wanted a big family. The pregnancies were not easy for me. So the third one, our doctor knew that it was going to be our last if we could get it. And we did. And, they weren't perfect, but it was a reminder that we got our big family. I never used to think that 3 kids was a big family. It is. It's big.
Yeah.
Yes, it feels, each of their journeys was very different in how we got them. And their birth stories are unique, but they all know it all. Right. So it was we never had like a let's sit down pace and tell him his story. He's never not known it. So he just recently he was student of the week, and he did what's unique about you. And one of the things he wrote is, my mom did not carry me. And Will and I have laughed because we were like, did they think that like we never carried him?
We never held you?
We just came out walking. Like we don't, but his story to tell in ways that make him unique. And he's certainly is not embarrassed of it, and definitely loves Katy and her family, knows the role that they played. And, he just had a birthday, and Katy sent him a gift of all of a gift card to his favorite places. And one of my kids was like, how did she even know that? What do you mean? Of course she knows that. Like,
of course.
Well, she knows you, not because she carried you, but, he definitely understands the connection to his story.
I love that. Katy, you should have sent a huge chocolate bar or something.
Yeah, or maybe some suckers.
That's there you go.
Last year.
Okay, but she did ice cream,
I did.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
There you go. I love it.
But man, to find an ice cream place that was near y'all, that was here too.
That's hilarious.
But ice cream is fun. And yes, Pace was nice enough to take his brothers out for ice cream too. Yes.
I love that. Kendall, having sat in the seat of, you were an intended parent, and then you had, you carried your 2 pregnancies. What is maybe some advice, or maybe what is something that you would want to say to Kendall on, day one of, okay, surrogacy is going to be it, not knowing obviously the future? What would you want to maybe advise to other intended parents, or say to that day one Kendall?
Yeah, I wish I would have, like we talked about earlier, not questioned so much on if I was feeling the right emotion. I was just so worried. I was just so worried that I was not performing correctly, or that I didn't on the inside feel correctly, or that, of course I worried that it wouldn't all end happily ever after. And I'm not going to tell an intended parent not to feel that way, because you're going to feel that way based on how you got there. But I wish I worried less about my emotions during it. I wish I allowed myself to just kind of breathe it in. And enjoying it was probably too aggressive of a word.
Sure.
I think some people might be able to enjoy it if their journey to surrogacy was a little different than ours. I think we were just so wrapped up in pain for a really long time that I think enjoying it would have been, I don't know if that ever would have been possible. But I wish I would, tell day one Kendall, just, you're doing all right. Like, it's okay. Yeah. Whatever it is that you're feeling in that day is going to be okay. And that the love that you'll feel for your baby does not come because you carried him or her. I think that worry was probably I worried about that far too much.
Yeah. Katy, obviously you have a very unique position as far as when you were a gestational carrier to now, where you live and breathe this life. Yeah. What would you maybe say to day one Katy as you strolled through TJ Maxx and decided, I think I'll, just go be pregnant, versus, and then obviously from, just your years of industry experience, what is maybe some advice that you would want to give to a potential gestational carrier or even intended parents?
I think realizing that everybody's journey and part of this story is different.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, like, I came from a very like optimistic, this is great and fine. Of course, like they're great, this is going to work. And knowing that like Kendall and Will have walked a journey, and my husband and I have walked a journey. And I think Kendall said it beautifully, though. We all have the same goal, and the same goal was a happy, healthy little guy.
Mm-hmm.
And we did get to that goal, and he is an amazing young man. And we've been really grateful to get to watch all of these things. But those little bitty things, I think, can seem so big in the moment. And yeah, that would be my advice to myself, is just remembering like we're just going towards this one big, happy, healthy little guy goal, and appointments are going to come and communication is going to come and all of those things. But that's the important part, is just that tail end, and everything else will grow and flourish from there. And it has. And we didn't have a journey that some people say they experience like through the pregnancy. And I mean, I'm sure some of that was like our personalities, but I remember when I matched, I was like, okay, I don't want to be matched with somebody that wants to talk to me every day. Like, I'm busy.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's that perfect match. I mean, I think Gail really knew from our personalities, like we were a good match in that regard. So yeah, I think just remembering that everybody has a different part of their story, and all those feelings are valid and great, and just focusing on the end.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, Kendall, Katy knows this about me, but I have a very codependent relationship on coffee. Coffee and I are great friends. And so I always like to ask the final question of what filled your cup today? Literally or figuratively, what was the thing that has filled your cup today?
I mean, I will do anything that Katy asks me to, you know. So it's a good rule of thumb. If Katy and Clayton is in your life and she asks you to do something, you should probably do it. So when she asked me to do this, yes, Katy, of course. And you know, every single time I'm around her, Katy is who fills my cup. And I am extremely grateful for our friendship. And I'm grateful that I was able, you know, I started a journey saying that this is a contract and this is a business relationship. And that is what our friendship was based on. And that did help me move forward. So, you know, that was the beginning, but everything after that, you know, all of the extras after that is what filled my cup then. And 9 years later, after he was born, I'm still lucky enough that she continues to do so.
You got salty coffee now, Katy?
Yes. But that's expected with Kendall. No, same thing. You know, we've been doing this thing called life, and, you know, they had Payson pretty quickly, had the other two, and our kids have grown quickly in the last 10 years as well. And we also haven't had time to reflect, and now I'm going to have to go read the blog. And that's what I was most excited about today. And that is what filled my cup, is being able to remember some of those fun moments and experiences. And it is always a joy to get to connect with Kendall. She is a wise woman that I like. We are 100% more blessed that we have the Monroes in our life, and her mentorship and kindness that she has showed us. And so this was a treat for me, for sure.
I love that. Well, Kendall, I am so beyond grateful to you for being vulnerable, for sharing your story, for being willing to, you know, just look back and cry with us and remember with us and celebrate everything that got you and your sweet family to this point. And really, truly, I am so grateful that you said yes when Katy asked you, because I think your story is just, it's wonderful that you were able to give this gift to other intended parents that are either in the thick of it or starting off, or, just any point in time, and for other carriers to hear, just how everything can evolve and change and all of that. So again, I am so grateful for your time and that we were able to do this together.
Thank you guys so much. It's great.
Thank you, Kendall. Thank you, Whitney.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Me, You, and Who. We appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed our discussion today. As we wrap, we would like to remind you of some of the ways that you can stay connected with us and be part of the Me, You, and Who podcast community. Firstly, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode and can stay up to date with our latest content. But that's not all. We also have an exciting YouTube channel where we share some bonus content, behind the scenes glimpses, and video versions of our episodes. Head over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button there as well. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when the new episodes go live. And for more exclusive updates, engaging discussions, and a chance to connect with fellow listeners. Be sure to follow us on our social media accounts. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Create a Happy Family. If you're interested in finding out more about creating a happy family, please visit us at www.createahappyfamily.com. Thank you again for being part of the Me, You, and Who community. Your support means the world to us. I can't wait for you to join us next time as we continue to share stories and journeys of creating happy families.